Young man, do you want to succeed, to expand beyond your horizons? If you want to be free, then you must learn to master yourself, your thoughts, feelings, your body and spirit. Master your subjective consciousness. Every action has an opposite and equal reaction. The world outside of yourself is ruled by those who are not ruled by their base instincts. Young man, go forth into the world after this. Meditate, contemplate, then plan and execute an action towards success. Take a risk, break the rules, and be disciplined within self.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannon could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
The feeling of awe that you get when you look up in the sky. And supposedly there's no light pollution and you can actually see the stars. That feeling of facing your smallness, your finitude in the presence of infinity. That is a feeling that can be quite awesome, fearful, inspiring, because there's something in you that is called upon to be greater than that which you currently are. It is the same response that you get as a prey animal when you face a predator. Because again, you're facing your smallness, your finitude, and there is something that is called upon to be greater than what you are right now, or you will die, or you will not survive. You will not make it through. So you have the piloerection, the puffing up of the hair, to literally make yourself, okay, if you're a cat, for example, you have more hair, to literally make yourself more than you are. But over millennia, this same feeling has called us to evolve, to be better than what we are, inspired great art. It is, as Jordan Peterson will put it, a religious feeling. Well, why is it a religious feeling? It's a question of definition. It's a profound feeling. It is that feeling that calls you to be better than what you are currently. And it is all tied to what one might call fear. So, Dr. Thunder, are we in danger of losing the feeling of awe? Are we in danger of not facing fear, perhaps not even knowing what the real dangers are, and to the degree to which there are dangers as a group now? Given our technological situation, our situation with medicating ourselves, and on and on. There's certain things that you can see. Our technological situation puts us in a situation whereby we don't necessarily see what the dangers are. We don't see how dangerous Twitter is, for example. So we are not called to face that in a fear response. And to the degree we have anxiety, we want to dull it down with some kind of medicine rather than face it and have that thing which is called in us, which has been called in us for millennia to evolve. Are we in danger of losing that, Dr. Thunder?
Yes, yes, we are. How are you doing, Ike?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's been an eventful week already. I mean, we're just getting started. Yeah, the answer to that question is yes, we are in danger of that. Uh, it's the danger of making things so accessible, so easy. You know, it is, it's like, I may have used an illustration last week about, you know, the boxer doesn't usually want their kid to box. They want their kid to do something else. You know, in the Rocky movies, Rocky doesn't want his son to be a boxer. He wants him to use, what's up here. And that's admirable. I mean, you want to protect your kids. You don't want them to take uh, needless risks. But there was something about the stiffness of the competition and the either you make it happen or you die. You know, what does not kill you only makes you stronger. There's that part that's sort of missing. It's actually a dynamic that it's actually an issue that is fueling many of the problems in the dating market.
Okay, well, let's hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's creating those issues because uh, it used to be that marriage and coupling was it was a survival tactic.
Mm-hmm.
We were all being persecuted by, the king and his court. We were all being, ran over roughshod in the elements and nature, and the lack of technology to insulate us from nature made it so that you didn't know you didn't know if tomorrow was going to come. But it made it very much easier for women to decide who it was they were going to go with. They need to go with someone that is strong enough to protect them, and they can't be lollygagging around about it. As the saying goes, piss or get off the pot.
Mm-hmm. 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 I see. So making things accessible, in this case, or shall I say, in the where you ended up, also there's a question of infinite choice without much necessity, right? There's not a lot of
Right.
necessity, but there's a lot of choice. There are many, many things, and we're still at the level of the collective. And this show is about you, ladies and gentlemen. This show is about you getting ish done. Okay. But we're going to vacillate, move back and forth between the collective and the individual today with regards to the fear response. Okay. And there was a comment here about, which is one that always comes up and which is always relevant, about the exposure therapy, if you
Oh
will,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which, when you are afraid of something, and again, there is that thing that is being called in you to grow, expand, right? Which is another way of looking at it. And the only way to do it is to walk into the fear, is to face it. If you don't even know the fear is there, or if you cannot even see what the dangers are, right? Because if you want to get a little bit more into the corners with it, you can talk about technology in the sense that light, for example, the fact that I started out by saying, hey, look into the night sky, right? The fact that you can't see that night sky anymore in most cities, well, what exactly is that doing to us? Okay. Do we know? Is it doing anything? How can it not do something, right? So goes the thought, right? Like, how can it not affect us? Something that we have come up with, evolved with, been part of our soul, our environment this whole time. Still, with the whole light issue, is the blue light problem, right? It is almost impossible to find a spot that is perfectly dark these days without some LED light, whether in the air conditioner unit or the VCR, or the microwave, or the whatever. And worst of all, your phone, right? That is killing you. And you don't even know that that is a problem, right? Twitter, I said, is an example whereby we're being put in situations where we think we're reducing the violence, right, by keeping people far away from each other and tweeting at each other. But we find that the threat of violence, okay, is actually necessary for being civil, right? Because people go crazy online because there is no threat of them getting punched in the face. An armed society is a polite society is another one that calls upon this very line that I'm on right now, right? So there are many things, many ways in which the group evolutionarily can and maybe will go astray with, because we don't necessarily see the dangers in front of us because we have kind of hidden it all and we don't necessarily see what the problems are. So let's leave that area for a bit and let's go down to the individual, okay? Let's go down to the
Mhm.
individual vis-a-vis the things, your challenges, your weaknesses, your things that you need to deal with. There's something here about anxiety. Let's start from the aspect of, Dr. Thunder, is it a good thing to be comfortable? And by that, I don't mean, okay, so maybe you want to go to the gym and it's difficult, okay? And it keeps you honest, okay? But also, is there a place in your life that you're trying to get to? Or is it a good place to be in your life where, you know what? I'm in cruise mode right now. I got my business going, or I got my degree going, or I got my career going. Okay. I have this family thing that is on cruise control. I have these other things that are on cruise control. And I'm like, let me chill. Okay. This is a situation where we think that this is what some people see as the goal, right? But is that a good thing? And is when, okay, because okay, I think I know you're going to say it's not a good thing. But when should you where should you stop, or how far should you push? When are you just becoming a megalomaniacal crazy person that is delusional about your aspirations? Okay, is it a good thing to be comfortable? Is comfort the goal? How do you manage it? And at this point, perhaps you can use examples in your life, right? And are you comfortable now? And how do you know how much of the envelope to push without completely tearing it up and exposing yourself to the elements, right?
Yes. You can sleep when you're dead. That's my basic answer to that question. If I'm going to go into some nuance, then part of what you're talking about is retirement. Um, because it seems that if you're working, then you should be pressing. You should be ever trying to improve. Once you lose that, it's time to retire.
Hmm.
Get out of the way of someone else that still has the drive. You're actually, you're not doing anyone a favor by continuing on when you're not worth anything.
When was the last
You
time
know,
you scared yourself, Dr. Thunder? You don't have to be specific, but there's got to be a because this all here. If you're not scared, none of this we're saying makes there is no point to what we're saying, right? If
right?
you're not actually scared, okay, and not just maybe the small fear of again. That's why I use the gym as an example. It is not the fear of going to the gym we're talking about, okay? We're talking about the awe response, the prey response in front of a predator. That thing which says, "Oh my God, crap!" Right? Can I do this? Should I be doing this? This is crazy. Why don't I just go back into where it's warm and cozy, right? And so, when was the last time, in the last circumstance, that you were afraid in terms of pursuing something?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I got my, the reason you're listening to me, the reason, I'm still, that I'm viable, that I make a living so that I can, have a studio to sit in, and is because, starting very young, uh, it was a relentless pursuit of, becoming a world-class musician. So lots of practicing, lots of lessons, lots of learning things, lots of struggling, lots of getting on the stage and, you know, dealing with anxiety to perform, um, and then all the degrees and everything else. But as a freelance musician, you don't know if you're going to make it or not. Not for sure. I mean, you can kind of start to get a little bit settled with things so that it's not like you're pulling something out from under you every second. And, you know, you can get a little bit of continuity, but you don't ever really know. And before I took the job at the university I teach at, I had 5 jobs. I had 5 jobs because that's what it took. You know, I have continued to acquire skills and degrees and all that stuff because that's what it takes. And you don't have a chance to. You can't just sit around because I don't know when something's going to happen. I'll tell you a danger of tenure. I have tenure. Danger of tenure. I see this all the time. Is folks coast. They start coasting. Now, the plus was supposed to be that people would feel that they had enough job security to be able to actually go where the research suggests without fear of, getting fired or being sort of blackballed, uh, for being able to say politically inconvenient things, you know, uh, without the fear of losing their job, without that. But to be able to continue to press, that's what tenure is really about. But there's a whole lot of folks that get tenure and they just start coasting.
Mm-hmm.
because now it's like there's not that threat of, oh, where's my next check going to go from, come from? And there's not the need to actually regularly interface with the real world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Jared put something down there, which kind of crystallizes the half of my question, which you didn't answer, which is the when is enough aspect of it, right? When
Uh,
are you just being crazy now?
no, I don't. I think I mean, it's like it's in the eye of the beholder, right? Uh, it's like what
Mm-hmm.
they say about beauty. Um, I haven't seen where enough is enough.
Okay,
I'm still trying to figure out where
so
that is. I don't see the end of the rainbow yet. I don't know. I, I just
mhm.
assume that the rainbow goes on forever. You know,
Now there are many dimensions into which one can improve and grow, right?
right, right.
And a good guideline is if you're not doing anything that scares you, I think that's a simple one. Like if you're not really doing something that pushes you outside of your comfort zone, that makes you uncomfortable, right? Then, as you said, you retire or you die, right? It's over. There's no point. There's no point to it. Okay. This is not okay. Now we might come back to that. Leroy is asking about value. See, value is one of those things that is so, it's like the water in which you swim in. People think it's a difficult thing. You cannot wake up and perceive anything without value. Okay. So I hear it said all the time, asked all the time, this question about what is value, what is valuable, and who gets to define it, and those kinds of things. And it's like the reason why it's a problem is that it's like the air you breathe. Value structures are necessary in order to perceive. Okay. I'm going to start from there and then I'm going to say something very quick, very easy in terms of what exactly it is. But basically, you have quarks, okay, that combine to form protons and electrons and then combine to form atoms. And these things are doing all kinds of weird stuff, which you have no idea about. Vibrating this way, popping in and out of existence that way. There's almost an infinite number of ways to, shall we say, look at them, even visually. Okay. And you are not out there looking at quarks, electrons, and atoms and stuff. You're looking at things that help you do things. You're looking at a road because it helps you walk. You're looking at a cup because it's going to help you drink. You cannot perceive cup without the value that it has to you. You cannot perceive anything. And this is not a question of BS or philosophical thing. Not that philosophy is BS. But what I mean is the AI community has run into this problem by trying to solve the perception problem, right? And there is no perception without embodiment. And this embodiment is what gives you value. In other words, you cannot, this thing that you're trying to perceive or you're trying to make this machine perceive, but the machine has to have a body, an existence, and has to map this world onto its body so that it can get a grip on the world, right? And this grip that you're getting on the world is something that is of value to you. So you can use it vis-a-vis your ends. So now, what is value? Value is that which is worth pursuing. First of all, worth perceiving and then worth pursuing. If you're going from point A to point B, why did the chicken cross the road, right? Shout out to Jordan Peterson. Why did the chicken cross the road? Because, well, unless it's a dumb chicken, because it thought that the other side of the road was better vis-a-vis its value structure at that moment. So the whole question of value is one that people ask because we don't realize that We're in a narrative of value all the time. And
Wow.
it is just constant there. The questions that may be worth asking is the hierarchy of values and how your values are nested upon values, right? Because you're writing, you're speaking now. Well, why are you speaking? Well, because I'm a social commentator, says Dr. Thunder. Well, why you're a social commentator? Because, right? So these particular values, the chicken crossed the road because of some other bigger value that other side of the road is going to provide to it. But there is no waking up, perceiving, smelling, looking, tasting, doing anything without value structure. And again, this is not some woo stuff. You cannot even see anything, okay? Because there's just too much damn sense data in the world, okay? And you don't see the world, okay? You see value structures that have to do with what you want to do in the world. And I don't know if
Right.
that answers the question, or I don't know if you have anything to add to that point about value, because it does bear upon this whole thing about because we are growing towards something, right?
Yeah, it seems like the direction you know your the choices you make, the directions you walk in are all based on uh, maybe something you're trying to accomplish, or and even if it's a sort of interim position that you pursue, it's sort of setting you up for whatever that next step is. But you wouldn't make any of those moves unless you perceived that something was better, or better in that it was moving you towards something that you see yourself doing. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yes. So Leroy, let me get a one if that answers the question, or let me get a one in the chat if that whole question of value makes sense. Value, is that worth pursuing? It's very simple. It's not very complicated. People want to make it seem like this very, very deep, very complicated. Well, it is deep and profound, but that's because it's deep and profound the way the earth is profound. It undergirds everything. You're constantly walking on it, right? So it's not something that is obscure. It's not high up there in the atmosphere. It is right down there below your feet. It is a prerequisite to perception and action within narrative frames. These narrative frames are stories about moving from point A to point B. And why do you go to point B? Because point B is valuable, right? And then a deeper value is one upon which other values rest, okay? In which other values are nested. So that's it, okay? Now, it leaves the door to what Dr. Thunder said earlier, the eye of the beholder, the individual, okay? These kinds of things always bring it down to that level. You're not going to escape responsibility.
No.
Because I think that sometimes we're looking for something that's out there so that something can be set up, or so that we can point out to say, oh, well, it's just arbitrary. You see, they said it's valuable. And it's like, no, I don't care who said or what not, or whom you decide to follow or not. You still have to make a choice. It's still on you, the individual consciousness, because it is the individual consciousness that looks up in the stars, gets that feeling of awe, and gets that inspiration to move in a direction which will make them better than what they are, right? uh, that's the way the system works as the creatures that we are. So let me answer the question about megalomaniacal, last time one scared oneself, and those kinds of things. Now, I agree with you, Dr. Thunder, that it is in the eye of the beholder. When do you know that when is enough enough? Well, this is something that you should answer for yourself. But for me, I sometimes put it this way. So one of the things I'm doing in Africa, well, the one that scares me, because some of them are just like, oh, opportunities. Oh, let's try this, let's do this, whatever. But the one that scares me is I'm trying to get into this whole real estate development thing. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about me personally building an apartment complex, which I am doing, which is on my own timeline and certain other things. This real estate development thing is building luxury apartments in a particular place in a particular city where the amount of money that you need is staggering and you're going to need to sell it off to people. So you guys may know of these kinds of projects whereby you start building, but as you're building, you're selling to the clients, right? You're like, hey, put down your down payment. We're building this new, you know, set of apartments, buildings, housing, whatever it may be. Now, this is not my area of expertise. I've been in the construction world for a while, but I'm not a bank, okay? And I'm not a developer per se. I'm not a construction person. I'm an engineer person, okay? But an opportunity came up. I spoke with a friend of mine from high school whom um, we were just going back and forth, and he told me about certain ideas. I'm like, well, let me try my hands in this. I haven't really done it yet. Well, I'm doing projects here, which, by the way, I'm going to make a video within the next week. I'm going to show the progress in the apartment building that I'm building. I have several plots of land in Ghana here, building a couple of things. Those are just okay within my own time and my own thing. Those is not particularly scary. But when you start talking about $1 million project and selling it to people, flipping it and this and that, maybe other people's money, maybe the bank and this and that and the other, in a territory which is not my territory in terms of both the area, like in Nigeria. I was born there, but I don't do business. I haven't done business there forever. Never did business there. Okay. And then
Mhm.
also construction, right? Not my territory in that regard either. So that's scary stuff. Okay. And you might well, and then the question is, well, why do you have to do that? Like, why don't you just chill? um, you're doing okay. You seem to be doing all right for yourself. Why don't you just, you could keep on picking up the low hanging fruit? Why do you have to do this thing? For me, I always ask myself, well, if I don't do it, then who will? Or a version of that question. Or what is it about the type of people that do these kinds of things that is so different from me? Okay. Like, and how much of a this is not particularly dangerous or crazy, is it? It's just uncomfortable, right? What are the real risks here? And then I remember something you said, Dr. Thunder, a kind of a rough narrative that I have about something you said. Looking into the future, right? 5 years from now, right? Now, I don't know exactly what you said, but you get what I'm saying, right? I think it's something your dad told
Mhm.
you.
That's
Looking
right.
into the future 5 years from now is another way I like to look at it, which is okay, if it works out, what does 5 years from now look like? If it doesn't work out, okay, at least you're not going to have that regret of looking back and be like, I wonder what it would have if I had really pressed and pushed forward into the uh, going in there. So here's what I'm going to do. So I described here what exactly is scaring me at this very moment, right? How am I going about it though? I'm taking it one step at a time. I'm going to register a company in Nigeria, regardless, right? So I'm just, that part is going to happen, right? And this is how I've always done things, okay? The way I always walk into the fear is one step at a time, okay? I don't,
Mm.
I don't just go all leaping in or wait until I make a full jump. It's like, well, first step, go start that, register the company. How could it harm you? Okay. It's just like getting my different licenses in different states. I don't have any I just recently gotten up. It's 6 now. It was 5. I recently posted 5 on YouTube, but now it's 6. I haven't really done any business in Nevada, or I don't really know how I could do business in Nevada. But does it hurt me to try to get my license in Nevada and then get it? Doesn't really hurt that much. It costs money to get and maintain, but let's get it. So let's open up that business. Let's register that company, right? Renew my Nigerian passport, register the company. Um, let's talk to agents. Let's see how this works. Let's see if we can go to banks and convince them. Okay. Worst case scenario, I learn about the whole bank game. Shout out to Dan Pena. And Dan Pena says, yeah, that making money is about 95% balls, meaning 95% walking into the fear. In the sense that the people who wake up and go to banks and pitch banks don't have 3 legs, they don't have horns, they don't have 17 balls either. They're just people like you and me that just decided to put one foot in front of the other and do that thing. Now it's going to take calling 100 banks. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of uncertainty, risk, this, that, and the other. But one step at a time. Outline the project, register the company, think about how you're going to market it, start with the architectural aspects, see, and then get it approved. In other words, the general plan. You don't have to do all the engineering, but I want to build this, Mr. City. Whom do I need to bribe to get it approved? That kind of a thing. So you can then start inching your way there. You feel your way around, and you might find some little side streets. I may not end up doing this thing at this particular time, but I may find some side street opportunity as a result. And guess what? Now I have the business here, and this is the same way Prometheus Engineering got started. It's the same way anything gets done in my life, anyways. I don't necessarily have a full out blueprint. I just start taking steps in a particular direction. I don't know if you have any comments on that. Is that similar to how you do things, or are you more of a planner where you know all the steps and then you start executing? I'm going to feel my way through it, move one step at a time. Okay. I let the logic handle itself, because the logic for me is the simple part.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an intuitive. I have learned how to do some planning. A lot of the planning that I do is to make other people feel more comfortable following me. But I kind of have this stuff in my head, and I just start moving around. I mean, I'm an improviser. So I just did episode 180. Well, okay, so released episode 185. This is of my Conversations with Dr. Thunder series, and that's what's playing back here with Melanie King. Go and check that out. But I also just interviewed earlier today Keisha Ariel. It was a great conversation also, and so that'll be airing probably Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That'll be when it premieres. But in my conversations, my interviews, I mean, I write down like a list of like bullet points, but really it's improvised. I'm improvising. I'm just, and there's some fear associated at times with like which questions are going to be esteemed to be too far. Like, you want folks to feel comfortable, making people feel comfortable to be willing to share things that maybe they won't share with other folks. That's kind of part of it. But like, there's a lot of kind of flirting with whatever the edge is and kind of just seeing what's out there. And there's always kind of the fear that you'll interview someone that won't volunteer any information, or unless you're asking them a specific question, won't understand that it's a conversation And when I'm done talking, if there's a clear question perceived or not, you can add to the conversation by going whatever direction you want to. And sometimes folks just don't do that. I had one interview in particular where the whole interview, and this is an iconic, legendary bass player, played with Miles and Miles Davis and everybody. And I interviewed him, and it was really a hard interview because he kept answering questions like with one word responses, or in a manner of speaking, was sort of on the sly critiquing my questions, as I was, so just stuff like that. And so that's a there's always a fear of like doing something different, doing something that you've not done very much of. But I'll tell you the fear that I think maybe has actually helped propel me the most in my life. And that is a fear of failure. I'm a hard worker. I work constantly. I'm always tweaking. I'm always working on something. And I don't want to be a failure. I don't want to have that situation where I look back on my life like, man, I didn't do anything. That stuff that I did sucked. I don't want that. I want to be able to look back and say, man, that's what I'm talking about. And
so,
yeah.
what kind of? So I think that we've answered this, but let's clarify. Because when we say, okay, the eye of the beholder, and I say, hey, you should do something that scares you. As a matter of fact, not everyone, and this is not a criticism, this is a personality thing. You see, everybody knows my little mantra. Well, not everybody. Nobody knows who I am. But basically, if you've heard me before, I'm always looking at things from the internal perspective. I'm very, 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 very much a guy that lives inside. I know my insides very well, right? So I don't need much external guidance. That means I'm very much blind to the external, by the way. Okay, that's something, there's always trade-offs in life, right? So for me, an answer like, well, just know what scares you. It's like, oh, perfect. I know. Like, so I can think about something, feel the fear, and then, okay, that's the place that I need to go towards. I don't need to ask, it doesn't need to be demarcated out there. But then there is the external markers. The question here, are you talking about sacrificing time, trust, money, those kinds of things? Okay. Let me start the answer, then you can respond to the question. For it is all those things, right? To sacrifice your time and your labor and your efforts into pushing towards a direction that is not guaranteed an outcome. Or shall we say, where you don't know, it is uncharted territory. You are in the wilderness. You're Moses guiding the people or yourself, your soul, through the wilderness, trying to find the promised land, and you don't know where it is. And that is going to sacrifice both time, money, and resources, and also relationships, okay? In the sense that some bridges might get burned inadvertently. Some people are going to need to be left behind. Some people get swallowed by the Red Sea. Who knows, right? That kind of thing. Any input as to some kind of external markers as to, well, these are the kinds of things that one sacrifices when moving towards such and such goals.
Yeah. Well, you've heard the expression, it's lonely on the top or at the top or whatever. Um, and part of that is because the closer you get to your destiny, whatever that means, um, the closer you get to, or the higher you go, let's just put it that way. And higher defined as an altitude difference between you and other people that are maybe similarly wired. So the higher you go, the fewer people there are at those higher altitudes, and the fewer that can tell you what the next altitude is going to be like. So there's a sort of alienating kind of alienation that kind of occurs as you continue to rise. Um, there's always the risk, the chance that you spend all your time doing this thing, and everything blows up in your face.
You look like one of the big things, and let me mention this, okay? Because I don't think it has occurred to you and I to mention this very important part, which is the stigma, okay? Risking looking like a freaking idiot,
Oh, right,
right?
right, right. Yeah,
You heard that,
yeah.
Leroy? Want to risk looking like a freaking idiot,
Yeah,
like in front of everybody. Like
yeah,
you're gonna go try to do this dumb thing. You're gonna try to do this. No one, you're gonna fail in front of everybody. The
yeah,
in front of everybody part is huge. Okay, okay, and it's not trivial either because as social animals, the our fear response to ostracization from the group is very deep because it often is associated with dying, getting kicked out into the tribe, being out there alone.
yeah. That's
You're not going to
right.
survive. So there's that deep fear. But this is a big aspect too, that risking in terms of risk, why people don't do the things that that they may want to do, whatever it may be, is you know how am I going to look to my friends? How am I going to look to my family, to my neighbors when it doesn't work out? Right? How about if I just chill and stay right here next to the fire where it's still comfortable? Right? And again, some people are going to be right next to the fire, tending the fire. Some people are going to be 10 meters away from the fire. And some people are going to be hundreds of miles away from the fire. They're not all the same person. We spoke last week, Dr. Thunder, about the different stages and the different stages of an endeavor and the different types that it takes. In other words, the barbarian that we're talking about, the person that goes out there into the wilderness, okay, the Moses that is leading the people into the wilderness. And by the way, maybe the reason that Moses didn't get into the promised land is because he's not a manager type; he's an entrepreneur. It's like you're not supposed to. You're a barbarian. You're a desert type guy, okay? Your job is
Okay.
done. You're going to mess things up when we settle down. You're great in the wilderness. You're not, we don't need your barbarian tendencies in the promised land. But, anyways, anything to add on the whole point of the fear of ostracization, the fear of looking like an idiot? And this is a real thing, right?
Yeah. Um, the egg on your face. Yeah. That is a real thing. I wonder how much I'm actually afraid of that. I think part of I think because I'm a performer. I'm on the stage all the time. I talk for a living. I teach and I'm in front of people. I'm the center of people's attention for a living. Right? So I think maybe that because I do it so much, maybe I don't I don't necessarily have as much a fear of falling on my face. But then again, I am being, so I did this, I did this presentation. It was a panel discussion, and started with I don't know, about a 25-minute presentation. It's on my YouTube channel. It's called The Power of Yes, Developing Skills for a Career in the Music Industry. And the reason that I I thought of The Power of Yes was because of the movie Yes Man, which is a Jim Carrey movie that makes some rather, I think, profound points about being willing to embrace certain kinds of risks. And no one's born with experience, so you're going to end up having to do some stuff that you haven't done before anyway. Just embrace it. Just be willing to to say yes. But my whole point was, you're going to have a skill set that is rounded enough to be able to say yes. So in other words, you're not, it's not it's not like a fool's errand or something. It's not like you're going to end up with a bad situation 100% of the time. Let me still try. That's not what we're talking about. We're saying it's within a range. It's like, okay, I'm a musician. I have all these skills in music. And if somebody asks me to do something music related, I'm going to be able to figure out how to do it because, of my education, because of, the experience that I have. But even when I didn't have the experience, if I had enough knowledge or experience in a adjacent sort of way, or I'm sorry, in adjacent area, adjacent discipline within music, so for instance, I've written for orchestras and stuff like that, but maybe I haven't written for a marching band yet. Well, the writing principles are the same, and if I've written for orchestra or concert band, then I have the skill set necessary to be able to write successfully for a marching band, but maybe I still haven't done it. And so I suppose there could be some fear associated with taking that risk, but it is a risk within reason. It's not a blind leap, right? Again, I think that's a mistake that folks make when they're talking about, when they, assign certain, concepts to religion wrongly. The word pistis is the Greek word pistis, which is translated as faith or believe in, trust in sometimes. And people will say, hey, that religion stuff is just about taking a blind leap. It's the antithesis of science. It's the opposite of, making sound decisions based on, evidence. It's just, willy-nilly doing whatever. I know that the principle of gravity is going to cause me to die if I step off the side of this mountain, but I have faith, and so I'm going to do this anyway. No, it's not that. Actually, faith actually means, in this context, pistis. The word pistis means argue to the point of belief. So you start somewhere that makes some kind of sense. It still is a risk because you don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you're making choices that are based on the information that you have. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Still fear associated. Still needs to be uh, a lot of respect and and concern, but it's not stepping off the side of a mountain hoping that you will magically start to float.
Indeed. So you talk about skill, and one particular skill that you have developed is the skill of being in front of people. So, ladies and gentlemen, Toastmasters or trying stand up comedy is something that will help you a great deal. Somebody talked about social anxiety earlier on, and we talked about exposure therapy. Right? Exposure therapy is good for any kind of anxiety, and it will help you grow. And the thing about growth is when you grow in that one area, when you go into Toastmasters and you conquer the fear of public speaking per se, it's not just that area in which you've conquered.
Yeah,
You didn't just conquer public speaking because you
that's
opened
right.
an internal pathway, and that internal
Yep,
pathway in you can be applied in many, many, many respects, right?
facts.
So that's why Toastmasters is great. Um, Stand up comedy because they have these open mic nights where a whole bunch of people are going to go up before you and look like idiots anyways. So
Look,
you might want to try. Go ahead.
let me tell you. Uh, okay, so I always have I'm an instrumentalist. I can sing, but it's not that's not really what I do. I can sing to show you what the parts are. I can sing if I'm feeling inspired in the shower. Um, I can sing in tune, but that's about it. You don't want to really hear me singing. I am an instrumentalist, so in a manner of speaking, the instrument serves as somewhat of a buffer between me and the audience, right? So there's something between, and that's the instrument, right? So the instrument is, I'm playing the instrument, it's me that they're hearing, but in a manner of speaking, the instrument is between me and the audience. And even if I was singing, what would be between me and the audience would be the form of the song that I was singing, the lyrics that I was singing, right? There's a structure that is between me and the audience. That's not the case with stand up comedy. All you got is these jokes. And that makes that particularly impressive when people can um, uh, develop that kind of confidence. Um, because by definition, comedy is subjective. So some people are going to find things that you say funny, and others will not. And there's always got to be the fear of the heckler. So that's quite uh, conquering that is quite impressive. Uh, that is the of the performers that I can think of. Those are the ones that maybe I admire the most with respect to that issue of conquering fear.
Shout out to the super chatters in the building, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. We have DC. Okay, always supporting, saying, enjoying the podcast. $2, $2, $2. Great topic, gentlemen. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. And also, we have Gail in the building with her last $2. Last $2. She's not gonna lose. Right. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much, Gail, for the $2. Okay. Now,
And by the way, that is evidence that the super chat function works. And remember, we will take not only your super chat, we will take your EBT, we will take half the cash value of your food stamps. Several ways that you can get in.
indeed. Indeed. So let's look a little bit here. I haven't seen this video before. I just saw somebody chopped up something from Jordan Peterson talking about the letting your weaknesses burn. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I started out this conversation by saying, hey, looking into the night sky and having that feeling of awe, similar to the feeling of being faced with a predator. It calls out something in you, calls you to puff up. Okay? There is an adrenaline rush, perhaps. It is calling you to be better than what you currently are so that you can face that threat or face the infinity. Okay? And this is a calling that has pulled us through to evolve, to get better as a species. And this is something that in your life is also applicable in the level of the individual and in the level of the group. We talked about ways in which perhaps our modern day technological milieu, if you will, the modern technological situation has put us in a situation where we don't necessarily see the dangers. We have buffered things, made things accessible. The technology itself is posing dangers to us that we don't necessarily see. We are drugging ourselves up in ways such that we don't want to feel that anxiety and move towards that anxiety that then causes the prey to be better, okay, as a result of facing the predator, right? And then we started looking in our individual lives as to how we can conquer this fear and thereby moving beyond certain weaknesses that we have. Okay. And we say, hey, it's an eye of the beholder. You're going from point A to point B. You have selected point B because it is of value to you. Point B is going to take some resources, some faith, some trust. Okay. And there's going to be some risk and uncertainty to getting there. And then when you get to point B, okay, there's going to be another point C, let's say, or D or E or F. And these things are going to require of you a certain amount of faith, a certain amount of pushing into the fear. And that this is part of the zest of life in and of itself. That to settle down to a certain place where you're feeling comfortable is when you start to die. And we see people literally die after they retire, right? Work is a good benchmark, right, for these kinds of things. By work, I mean, the typical, well, he worked at this place from 9 to 5, and this was his job. Okay. But we're talking about many, many different dimensions into which you're going to develop, into which you're going to push the boundary, many different kinds of wildernesses that you're going to lead yourself into to try to find the new promised land, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, let's see what this video has to say about things. Hopefully, I don't get, I probably will get, flagged or whatever. Yeah. Let's see. Fair use. Fair use, niggas. And of course, the interwebs. I should have buffered it first. Does seem like it's all buffered and everything.
Well, it seems like you have it on HD. You should crank that down. Take that down to at least 480.
Yeah, we don't need to see his mug that clearly.
Yeah.
What should move forward in time with me and what should be let go as if it's dead wood? And the more dead wood that you let go of and burn off when you have the opportunity, the less it accretes around you. Here's something interesting about forest fires. people have been trying to prevent forest fires for a long time, especially that damn bear, Smokey, right? He's trying to prevent forest fires. And so, because forest fires burn up the forest, and that can't be good. But here's what happens if you don't let forest fires burn is that, well, forests collect a lot of dry branches, right? Because tree branches die and wood falls on the forest floor and collects. And so the amount of flammable material keeps increasing with time. And that's not so bad if it's wet, but if the amount of flammable material is increasing and it gets really dry and then it burns, then you have a real problem. The forest fire can burn so hot that it burns the topsoil right off, in which case you don't have a forest at all anymore, you just have a desert. And lots of trees are evolved to withstand forest fires of a certain intensity, and some won't even release their seeds unless there's been a fire. And so a little bit of fire at the right time can stop everything from burning to the ground. And that's also a really useful insight, a metaphorical insight into the nature of sacrifice, right? It's also a lot easier to let go of something when you're deciding to let go of it because you've decided yourself that you're done with that. It's a weak part of you. It needs to disappear. You do that yourself, it's much better and much easier than it is if it's taken away from you forcibly, in which case you're very much likely to fight it. There's another interesting thing here, a motif that runs through the entire Bible. It's a very, very powerful motif. And it's partly associated with this idea of walking with or walking before God. And in the New Testament, Christ says something like, thy Father's will.
Well, let it buffer. So far, any thoughts on the topic of allowing things to burn, letting go of the past self such that it does not accumulate and burn you up, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good illustration of the forest fire business. Yeah, I think you do have to. Okay, so as you're reinventing yourself, you actually have to be reinventing yourself, right? You have to actually be taking something on that's actually new, leaving some of the old stuff behind. There's that thing in the Bible that talks about new wine for new wineskins. And the damage that will be done to the old wineskin if you try to put the new wine in the old wineskin. You know, it's going to take a new you to be able to accommodate, not accommodate, to handle, to yeah, to be able to handle, to be able to grow with whatever you want to say. You know, it's going to take a new you to be able to handle the new stuff coming. Yeah.
Indeed. And that's why when you face those things, and then I ask myself, whom is going to do it if not you? There is a part of that is my own personal methodology. There's a part of it where it is my future self that is asking me. And the future self is more of a projection that I have out there. The megalomaniacal crazy guy that is out there saying, well, if you are who you say you are, right? A superstar, right? If you are what the hell you say you are, then who the hell else is gonna do this crap, right?
Yep.
If you're not gonna do it, who's gonna do it? Your kid, right? Like, who is supposed to be doing these things? Whom is supposed to be expanding and building and leading the people in the wilderness, leading yourself out of one place into the other, taking your family from a particular position to the next position? Whom is going to do it if not you? Now, This doesn't make it easy, but this is a way of saying, hey, if anyone is capable of letting this side burn, going into the fire and torching out this debris, the weakness, it should be you, right? Because you're going to pass it on to someone else. Okay. Anyways, let's continue. I think it's done buffering.
And she had written a number of essays in university and got universally walloped for them. And the reason for that was she couldn't write really at all. She was really, really bad at writing. And so I was sitting down with her trying to explain to her what she was doing wrong. And she was being very annoying about it, very recalcitrant, very, very unwilling to listen. That was a pearls before swine thing, you know. And at one point she said, I can write perfectly well. This university professors just don't like my style. And I could feel my hands creep towards her neck. Yeah, well, that'd be funny if it wasn't true, but it was also true. You know, and I thought, what the hell's with you? You can't even write, and you think you have a style. And not only do you think...
I'm sure you've heard that one, Dr. Thunder.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just my style of
knowing
playing.
How to write is not a style. That's the other point, right? And so, you know, she instead of humbling herself, which was necessary and okay, right? Because she was a new university student. It's like, of course you don't know how to write. When were you going to learn? In school? I don't think so. So she was proud of her insufficiency. That's arrogance, right? That's not humility. It's self-deception and arrogance. To be proud of your insufficiency, that's a very foolish thing. And that means to cling to the parts of you that are dead. And so back to the walking with God idea, you know, as you elevate your aim, you create a judge at the same time, right? Because the new ideal, which is an ideal you, even if it's just an ideal position that you might occupy, even if it's still conceptualized in that concrete way, that becomes a judge because it's above you, right? And then you're terrified of it, maybe. That's why you might be afraid when you go start a new job, right? Because this thing is above you and you're terrified of it and it judges you. And that's useful because the judge that you're creating by formulating the ideal tells you what's useless about yourself, and then you can dispense with it. And you want to keep doing that, and then every time you make a judge that's more elevated, then there's more useless you that has to be dispensed with. You have a judge that says, get rid of everything about yourself that isn't perfect. That's also what God tells Abraham, right? The thing that's interesting about this, I think, is you can do it more or less on your own terms. You don't have to pick an external ideal. You can pick an ideal that fulfills the role of ideal for you. You can say, okay, well, if things could be set up for me the way I need them to be, and if I could be who I needed to be, what would that look like? And you can figure that out for yourself, and then instantly you have a judge. And I also think that's part of the reason people don't do it, right? Why don't people look up and move ahead? And the answer is, well, you know, you start formulating an ideal, you formulate a judge, it's pretty easy to feel intimidated in the face of your own ideal. That's what happens to Cain versus Abel, for example. Then it's really easy to destroy the ideal instead of to try to pursue it, because then you get rid of the judge. But it's way better, lower the damn judge if it's too much. Like if your current ambition is crushing you, you know, then maybe you're playing the tyrant to yourself, and you should tap down your ambitions, not get rid of them by any stretch of the imagination, but at least put them more reasonably within your grasp. You don't have to leap from point 1 to point 50 in one leap, right? You can do it incrementally. But I really like this.
A couple of things here that have been said are worth noting. We've been asking the question, when is enough enough? When do you think that, why should you be doing this? And I say, well, if you don't do it, whom is going to do it? I mentioned that there is a future self or an ideal self, this judge, right? That is going to call forth on you and say, hey, dude, what are you doing? I thought we were, you know, I thought this is who you are, right? Then why are you not going to take this particular leap, right? And Jordan is alluding to this and saying, hey, people don't want to have that judge. Also, he said something that ties on the megalomaniacal thing, but from the opposite direction, where people are proud of their weaknesses, where they say, hey, you know, I can't sing or I can't play, but rather than just admitting it, they say, well, it's a style. And I think about his hand creeping towards the person's neck is something. See, that's one thing I can't really. That's one thing I can't stand is that whole inability to just be criticized or criticize yourself or know or whatever that thing is. I cannot stand it. Okay, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on these things that he has said so far, or pick up any other particular threads on what he has said. Right.
Yeah, the style thing. Yeah, that jumps out. So, so uh, there's a usual thing. So I'm teaching the an improvisation course this semester, and during my introduction to the course, which I always do the first session, uh, I raised a certain issue and point because I wanted to communicate to the students that I understood what BS looks like. I am very adept at reading the nuance of BS. So for instance, something that folks will do is they will use certain terms as a way to both pat themselves on the back to sort of certain kind of superiority, and also criticize someone else. The term musical, as in, I'm not talking about a play with music. I'm talking about a quality. Such and such is musical, or that's not very musical. So something that they will do is they'll pick someone that has a particular skill set that they don't possess. Maybe they have a lot of technical facility, incredible dexterity on their instrument, and they themselves don't have that. So the way that they both criticize the person with the great facility is by saying something like, they have a lot of technique, but it's just not very musical. Now, what they've done is as I said before, they have both, because they can't play what this person plays. Of course, they don't have the they couldn't hold their horn, right? They they have nowhere near the capability necessary to play a fraction of what this other person plays. But it's not musical. So now they've patted themselves on the back because they have such a nuanced and involved sense of musicality expressed by their ability to, though this other person is clearly superior, they have a more attuned sense of musicianship. That's one tactic. Yeah. Another tactic, which is also pretty clever, but anyone that has been around long enough will see this coming around the corner, is that they will cite musicians that they believe it has been established that their style of playing didn't require a lot of technical facility on their instrument, right? So they'll say, oh, Thelonious Monk, he didn't have a lot of chops, but he was just, he was the baddest. And look, he was such an innovator in X, Y, and Z. Now, they're committing several errors here. One of them is, even if that was true, you still should be able to play your instrument well, because if it is true, then that means that he would be an outlier, an exception to the rule, and you're not going to make it that way by betting the farm on some possibility rather than going with the stronger probability. Shout out to Donovan Sharp. So there's an issue there. But really, the error that they committed is that they're just ignorant. Because if you listen to Thelonious Monk, if you've heard enough of him, you'll know that one of his primary influences was Bud Powell, and Bud Powell played a pile of piano. He was all over the piano. He was a virtuoso keyboard player. So if you can be confused for Bud Powell, that means you can also play a pile of piano. So Monk actually did have a lot of facility, but he just chose not to use it. And folks also make the same. They also make the same mistake with Miles Davis. And again, the problem is Miles went to Juilliard. You you have to be able to play to go to Juilliard. Okay, and then also Miles on some of those Charlie Parker records, when you thought it was Dizzy Gillespie, who was said to be the greatest trumpet player alive. Miles, I mean, is that Diz or is it Miles? I think it's Diz. No, it was Miles. So that shows you that at the lengths that people will go to not have to face reality and to not fully embrace change and say, look, I need to improve in this way. I need to do X, Y, and Z. They'll just hold on to that.
Or I'm not going to improve, and I don't, I'm going to take the grade that I get. In other words, I don't care if you improve or not in a certain sense, right? But what I can't stand is the dishonesty, is the shifting of the goalpost, is the I'm going to create a new rule. Oh, it's not this, is that, and like that part, because that part is just pure foolishness, because I am definitely in the range of now. This is for other people to judge, but for me, I judge myself as more of I wing it more than some other people, right? More people out there that are more on the ball. they're more technically. What's funny?
No.
There's some people out there.
You wing it. No. I didn't know that.
They're more on the ball. They're more technically proficient. They're more. They got there. I like using the whole spreadsheets thing because that's something I hate. They got all this kind of organization down in a certain way, and I tend to wing it more. But I'm not going to be like changing the goal and saying that
right.
all that other stuff is silly. And it's like no. It's like I know my deficiencies. I know that I'm maybe burning more fuel than I need to, and perhaps I'm not as efficient or this or that. I know that perhaps I'm spinning more plates. All these other kinds of things. Like I understand the trade-offs is the point. And some people just need to be right. They just need to be, and these people are not going anywhere. You can immediately spot them from a mile away. They're absolutely useless to you. That whole needing to be right crap. I'll take somebody that knows their deficiencies and will take the grade year because they know, okay, well, at this point in my life, I need to prioritize this thing. I'm going to let this one go a little bit. I'm like, yeah, great. Because what I need from you at this time is this thing you're prioritizing, by the way. So it's fine that you know you're not that particularly great at this other one area. Excellent. Right?
Yeah. One thing that I do in that class is I have I've proofed the class against that sort of tomfoolery. So the way I've done that is I've said stuff like, and I even said this yesterday in class. I said, one thing I will say is Charlie Parker might not be able to pass my class. So, in other words, innovation is not the measurement here. Now, of course, he would pass my class because he practiced like a demon, and he understood the tradition, right? So he wasn't just making stuff up as he went. The stuff that he innovated stuck because of his profound knowledge of what came before him, right? But, I tell them, look, I'm not evaluating your creativity. I'm not evaluating your natural ability. So this class is not a measurement of that. This class is a measurement of a list of objective things that you must master, plus the trajectory of improvement. So if you got a lot of natural ability, you coast through the class, you get to the end, you're not going to get a good grade. But I always have that one cat that think they're going to skate through. And, so like I said, the class is proofed against that. And so then I don't have to labor, or wrestle with, should I fail this person or not? I just look at the sheet and says, did he play this right? No. Did he play this other thing right? No. Did he have another creative way to access this that I didn't tell him to do? I don't care. That's a no. I just do it that way. Then I don't have to deal with any of the rest of that. I don't have to like evaluate the purity of their heart, and stuff like that. I can just, the right stuff didn't come out of your instrument, so you got a 0 on that. But people don't realize the thing is that folks don't realize that's really what the real world is. That's really what the real world is like. They don't care about any of that other foolishness, any of that other garbage. All they care about is, here, this is the thing that needs to get done. Do it this way. This is how I know it's been done correctly. And, and if you don't, then I'm going to get somebody else in here to do it.
Let me say one thing on that, and then you can do your last words and your shameless plugging. There is a way of doing things in the world that involves talking to other people, interfacing with other people, making sure that there's a shared space and everybody feels comfortable, right? That particular lever exists in the world, okay? Some people default to that lever and they stay there, and then they overuse it. They don't understand where the boundaries within which it applies and where it doesn't apply. There's another lever which is about getting ish done, the rules of things, right? Which says, well, this particular valve in this engine doesn't care about how creative you are or how you're able to tell the guy, how many excuses you gave, how your daughter is sick, and all that other kind of stuff, which is within the lever of social stuff. Okay. The MBTI psychological stuff, they call that FE. The FE stuff is in the social stuff, and then the TE is in the rules of things, how things actually work. You want to think about a real TE culture, think the Germans, right? As opposed to some other cultures, right? Or some other things. Now, some people mistake the fact that Obviously, they mistake the obvious, overusing of the FE. But the thing is, there's nothing wrong with knowing within yourself where your BS is. There's nothing wrong with winging it, in other words. Like, I may wake up in the morning and be like, I just said yes to this thing. I'm not absolutely sure I can meet the objective standards in this particular ways. And I know it. Okay.
Right.
And I'm gonna find some kind of woo way, maybe get help from this person, right? This, that, the other, to make the rules work in the realm of the rules of how things work. The problem is people take that BS within and they go start telling other people that, oh, it doesn't really matter. That's for you, bro. That's between you and yourself. Whatever inadequacies you have, you keep it to yourself.
Fact.
You still just got to figure out in this objective space of the world how to make shit work. Okay?
Yeah.
And people confuse these two things a lot. Just because you have some winging that you're doing, which some of us do more or less, okay, doesn't mean anybody's got to hear about it. You still deliver, you still produce. Nobody wants to hear about it. And there's this channel, I'm not going to mention the channel, a new YouTube channel that started out recently, that this cat will produce a video, okay, and he promises a video maybe every week. 3 weeks passes, he doesn't produce a video, and then boom, he comes out with a video, and inevitably he always says, oh, I haven't been producing video, I've been going through a lot of things, and da-da-da. Again, going into that whole realm of telling me about his feelings and his this and his that and his excuses in the world and blah, 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 blah. Like, dude, I don't care. It doesn't work that way. The algorithm doesn't care. Your channel's not going to grow that way. We all got to wing it, and we all got issues. But you got to know where that stops. And going through the world trying to manipulate people can only go so far. It is not going to build that engine. It's not going to take the rocket to Mars. It is not going to cause the seed to grow. Okay? You can't just talk the seed into growing when you placed it on concrete. Okay? There's a very limited area within which FE works, that extroverted feeling thing, that whole kumbaya thing, let's sit around the warm fire thing, let's all feel each other's pain thing. It's naturally sleazy to begin with. One immediately starts thinking about Bill Clinton. But anyways, Dr. Thunder, final thoughts, and shall we say anything you want to promote, and let's wrap this up.
Sure. So I want to try to answer this question that Leroy has down here. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know that I can give you. I mean, a lot of yeah. So define what you mean by made it. I don't know exactly what that means, but yeah, I mean, I went to school with a lot of super talented folks, and many of which are still performing, freelance musicians, many of which are, teaching music, all kind, many of them are still working in the industry. So I guess they made it then. I mean, I know, guys that are playing with, big name artists, pop artists, and in everywhere from that to A-list, jazz musicians in their bands and stuff. So yeah, I mean, you just have to kind of define terms. And then a bunch of folks that maybe don't work in that industry anymore, but still play, AKA on the side, as it were. Yeah, well, again, that still isn't stats who got the position they studied for. Well, again, that's still a little ambiguous. It's not like a professional school. Conservatories and schools of music aren't like professional school. Is the closest thing to professional school is like doing a music ed degree, where you get a teaching certificate as you finish, and there's usually a shortage of music teachers, and so a high percentage of them get placed. At the school that I teach at now, close to 100% of the students that graduate with a teaching certificate are placed in an actual job. So that's the closest thing that a school of music or conservatory is going to give you. Everything else is based on, you have got a bunch of performance degrees where people want to be performers, they want to be freelance musicians. And of course, that's the riskier path. And you're going to have some that make it, as I think maybe that's what you mean. And then you're going to have some that still perform, still play, but they're selling insurance, or they're, or they went on to do a master's degree in a different discipline, and they're a CEO of a company or something, but they still.
So it sounds like most of them made it.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So I suppose, in a matter of speaking, you can't control the outcome when you get started with something, and that's what makes those kinds of questions challenging, because we can find people that made it in practically any degree program, and people that didn't make it, if depending on what you mean by make it. But anyhow, so okay, so that's that. I dug the show today. I think it's important for folks to get out of their own way with respect to this manipulating other people by sharing personal tragedy. I'm going to tell you one of the reasons why watching reality competition shows, part of the reason why I have such a hard time with it. One of the reasons is because the judging is horrible. The people that they have either providing coaching or providing judging are not trained in how to judge. I mean, they aren't good judges. Okay. They're there because of some star power, because, the network wanted to make sure that they could get a certain number of people to tune in. But they're not there because they actually can provide good counsel. There are a couple exceptions to that, but for the most part, it's bad judging. The second reason is because of all this sort of sharing the backstory. Well, such and such's, mother has got cancer, and, and all they wanted to do was be able to sing, and, all this kind of stuff. And I see that as a manipulation, because I just want to know if you can sing or not. And if you can sing, or if you can play, if you're talented or not, it's not dependent on if you have the appropriate sob story. I don't want to hear that, and I don't care about that with reference to evaluating if you sound good or not. Now, on a human level, sure, I mean, I feel for you, but don't try to cloud my judgment by getting my emotions involved. Okay? And if you have to do that, if you're doing that on your job, stop it. Nobody cares about your excuses. They just want the job to be done well. I mean, I've worked with folks like this in the arts. You can imagine there's probably more of this that happens than maybe in other fields. But it's just stop it. Stop trying to manipulate people. Stop trying to get a better outcome for yourself. Trying to get to slide through by doing that. It's a sign of immaturity. It's it's wrong. I mean, I would judge it as being dare I say sinful. It's wrong. Stop it. Get some help.
All right. Any plugs?
Oh yeah. So Melanie King interview. Go and check that out. That was a great conversation. I've got let's see here, Keisha Ariel interview. That's going to premiere Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come back to check that out. I've been doing these sort of impromptu. I've been calling them struggle streams from my car. Folks seem to like those. There's a bunch of those on the channel you can check out. I recently interviewed Solomon Jones, Solar TV 84. So that's still pretty fresh. And I've got a Thunder's Thoughts coming up where I'm going to actually review one of Melanie King's videos. Do kind of a reaction to one of her videos. So that's Thunder's Thoughts. That'll be 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday, this coming Thursday. And then Getting Ish Done, on Tuesday. Coming back with Ike on his channel on Tuesday. I'm not sure what's going on for. Do we not have a case closed this Sunday? We might be off this Sunday.
We might be off. We might be on. But stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We will be sharing that.
Yeah. That's right. We'll be sharing that information. And if for some reason case closed is off, Ike and I will be on. So either way, you're going to see us
Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern.
That's right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring this to a close. Okay, I think that the message here is clear. Go out there on the limb because that's where the fruit is. Go out there into the fear because that's where the conquest of your particular weaknesses lie. That's where the evolution is. That's where the awe and the religious impulse and the inspiration is, right? And it is almost a biological imperative. You don't even have a choice on the matter because if you don't move in that direction, people tend to die, quite literally. Okay, beyond the metaphor or beyond the situation, the specific situation of being faced with a predator, whereby then you have to really step up or die, we do find that people lose their zest for life and lose meaning and therefore just lose their life after they stop pursuing, growing, and such, right? And how do you know which direction to grow towards? Well, that is something that you need to look within yourself and determine. Never you say, Dr. Thor, you tell people, okay, stop the whole using the manipulation and such. Well, to the degree to which you do that, you're going to not progress in particular directions. And some people can't help themselves, unfortunately. Okay, some people can't help themselves, and they stay stuck in that place, and they don't understand why they're not progressing. And then on the other end, you have people. You have people like me whom default perhaps way too much on the other side, and then we're blind to the need to create a feeling, feeling of commonality, of community, and so on, right? So, even though I don't like the whole balance thing, but the point is know your weaknesses, right? And even if you say,
yeah,
F
that
it,
stuff is all crap, though.
So even if you say F it, which I may say, or which you just say it's all crap, like, but you need to know that, hey, this particular thing I'm not skilled at. Let me call Bill Clinton. That kind of thing, right? You need to know that, hey, this particular thing I'm not quite good at it. Let me go get this
Make
particular
sure he
person.
washes his hands before you shake his hands.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. I was listening to Lex Friedman. Okay, so obviously you know Jordan Peterson, but do you know Eric Weinstein and Brett Weinstein, those two brothers?
Yes. Brett, especially Brett.
Yeah, Brett. Brett has the Dark Horse podcast with his wife. They did a thing recently with Jordan Peterson, which was pretty good. You guys should check that out. And Lex Friedman is the AI podcast guy, all part of the same kind of crew, all stemming from the Joe Rogan folks and stuff like that. And Lex Friedman is a eternal optimist, and he likes to talk about this feeling of community all the time. And he contradicted himself in a particularly interesting way recently, where he was talking about how, love is going to get us to the next, how, it's just his understanding of love, that is, that whole kind of community, right, warm feeling, that whole feeling love thing, and our capacity for love. And he's talking to a historian, and the historian is a cynic saying, hey, look, technology is not going to save us. Human beings are going to do bad things, original sin, blah, blah, blah. And Lex is saying the love thing. But earlier on in the conversation, Lex talked about his love for community that would have led him to be a good German soldier. In other words, people don't understand that thing that they call love is the same thing that leads people to go to burn people up. It's that whole same thing of, I am German, I am part of this community, that makes you turn around, pick up the gun, and shoot the other community.
Yeah.
Somehow people just think that, no, that's not it. It is mind-boggling to me to see people do that thing all the time. This whole community, love, kumbaya thing, and they think that it's all just going to lead to peace all the time. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that is the last word for today. And until next time, peace.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising, convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners.